Don't get me wrong, these are beautiful, but after all the other money we spent on our gliders, these prices plus shipping and handling were not it. So we're going to make a DIY glider kitchen. You can ignore some of the extra objects that are laying around here, and all you really need is a plastic container, a lighter, a razor to be able to cut, some type of circular object to trace your openings, and of course a marker to trace them. So first you want to take whichever object you plan to use to trace your opening, uncap your marker, and trace around that circle. When you pick an object to trace, you want to make sure that it's big enough for the gliders to be able to get in and out of the kitchen easily, and you also want to make sure that the height that you set it at makes it easy for them to get in and out of the kitchen as well. And once you do that, you can repeat the same circle on the other side. Next up is one of the hardest parts of this, which is cutting out the circles. This was especially difficult because the container we chose had thicker plastic, so I recommend choosing a container with thinner plastic to make it easier to cut through. Since filming this, we upgraded to a slightly larger container to just accommodate the glider's growth over time, and we made sure to choose a container with thinner plastic, and that made it a lot easier to deal with. I also found that scoring the circle, kind of like tracing around it before actually going through with cutting it, and then trying to cut it at an angle helped me to get through it more easily as well. So now you've got your circles cut out, but it's probably looking a little rough, and this is where the lighter comes in. You're going to want to open a window or a door or something for this part because you're going to be melting the plastic. You want to make sure that you smooth out those edges so that they're not going to be rough and won't harm your gliders. So you'll see me going back and forth using the lighter and then feeling the edges after it cools off so you don't burn your finger, just to make sure that it's nice and smooth and it won't be rough on the gliders as they pass through the circles. Now it definitely still looks a little rough and not perfect, but it's smooth and I promise they were okay. The next parts here were a bit extra. We took containers that we planned to use to set out their food and we tried to rearrange them, see what the best fit would be to still give them room to eat inside of the kitchen. And we glued them down with crazy glue. Only the one in the middle, which we were using for like a tiny water dish, actually stayed stuck to the lid. And we didn't end up doing this again for the second kitchen that we made. So definitely not a necessity, maybe could be helpful, but ultimately I think it kind of made it harder to clean the kitchen too, so I don't think I would recommend this. We've been using glider kitchens for about 2 months, and while it does help somewhat, if I'm being completely honest, it really doesn't completely mitigate the mess. Sugar gliders are gonna grab their food and run out of the kitchen and run around the cage and do whatever they want at the end of the day, but I feel like it's nice because it gives them a central place to be in. It does contain some of the mess at least, and it makes it easy for us to kind of gather their meal together and put it in the cage in one place. And that's it. You have your new glider kitchen. If you want to stick around, we'll show you what we're going to put in the glider kitchen. We're going to make up their BML staple diet mix and the vegetables and fruit that accompany it as well. The BML diet is one of the easier ones to implement, even though people say that it's strict, because you can get almost all the ingredients that you need to make their staple from any grocery store, with the exception of the calcium supplement and the vitamin supplement that they need. But those are available on Amazon and should be available in pet stores because they're actually like reptile supplements. Yeah. We like to get the egg boiling before we start mixing up the rest of the ingredients so that it's ready towards the end when we're ready to add it in. So you saw we first added our honey and now it's time to add our fruit juice. There will be a link to the recipe website that we're referencing for this. The BML diet should be the same across any website you look at, but just to provide that more easily for you. And you want to be mindful of what brands may or may not be available in your grocery store. We took a look at different glider forums and things like that to find alternatives for some of the items that were outdated as far as brands that were available in our grocery store. If you have a good quality blender, this doesn't matter too much, but we like to start to blend the mixture about halfway through actually adding all the ingredients into the recipe just to get it well mixed in. And you'll see this later on, but because our blender is so small, we ended up having to split the mixture up into two separate containers before we added the last couple of ingredients in. So definitely be mindful of the amounts of each ingredient that the recipe asks for to make sure that your blender can accommodate it, or you can make the adjustment like we did. Before we got to doing our research about the BML diet, we'd never heard of wheat germ before. That was the only ingredient that was kind of new to us, and it was interesting to see all the vitamins and nutrients that it contains, and we ended up starting to add it into our own smoothie, so that was one cool thing that came about from getting our gliders. This was also my first time making a boiled egg, because I'm not a fan of them for myself, and neither is my fiance, but it's for the gliders, so we had to do it. So now we're adding in their supplements. They have a calcium supplement, as you saw, and they also have a multivitamin supplement. We'll link these in the description box below as well. The chicken baby food was also a new one for us because we don't have kids, so that in combination with the egg added an interesting smell to this mixture. But again, this is for the gliders, they need it, so we had to do it. So yeah, you can see at this point the blender is getting pretty full, so we blended it again to mix in the chicken. And then we pulled out this random water bottle to pour half of the mixture into. And then I had to call for reinforcements because I couldn't open the blender by myself. But here we go. Pouring in half of the mixture, and then we ended up having to do a little bit of math just to figure out what half of each of the last ingredients would be so we could add them to each part accordingly, including the egg, which had to be cut in half. There it goes. So this is what the texture was looking like after adding in the last two ingredients and blending it up. As I said before, the smell was interesting, but yeah. You can see the vegetables there, and then we're adding the staple into that other container, and we ended up using the center one, like I said, just for water. They're also supposed to get fruit, but we had fed them the fruit before this, so there was no need to put it in again with their dinner. And now we're going to put it in the cage and let them enjoy, and then I will pack up the rest of the mixture because this is basically like meal prep for them. To store the rest of the mixture, we just pour it into ice cube trays, and the gliders get 1 cube per day along with the vegetables and fruit. And with the amount that it makes, about a tray and a half, it lasts us about 3 weeks or so. Thanks for watching. Bye!